Oh, the more time passes, the more I think it's just a flat circle. You know what, Kitty? Normally, I'd be a little bit annoyed, but I think I actually need it right now. So, yes, we can cuddle. I don't know, dude. I said something one time when I was like 17 or 18, and it was one of those things that I said when I was a kid that I really didn't I really didn't appreciate the gravity of it until later in my life. I said to one of my old friends, "Am I always to be torn? Am I always on life to be torn?" And the more time passes, the more I think maybe I was right. Maybe I maybe I am just meant to be pulled forever in two different directions. A lot of times in my life when I felt unsure about where to go and unsure about what to do, I rewatched old films from my childhood. And some of them aren't exactly from my childhood, but others are. Then, yet more films that I've kept watching since my childhood that I still cherish. I think I'm due for a rewatching of Lord of the Rings. There's this beautiful, poignant scene in Lord of the Rings where Frodo's basically trying to convince Sam, like, no, you need to stay here. You need to stay with the Shire. You need to stay with your wife and kids and with the people that love you and that you love and the land that you love. And he says, it'll still. He doesn't say this exactly, but he tells him, in essence, it'll be the same Shire, even if I'm not there. And that movie really gives me heart. I think that's what it does more than anything. It gives me heart. It makes me feel like this condition that I find myself in is something shared by a lot of people. I think everybody goes through a point in their life when they feel torn, when they feel like they're not 100% sure what they want to do. And really, when you're in that moment, it's especially as an adult, you can't stop living just because you've realized something is untenable in your life. You've got to keep going. You've got to keep doing all the things that you have to do to keep maintaining your life, even if there's a part of you that's like, this is not what I want. This is not how I want the things that I want. Whatever that uh, whatever that nibbling voice in your head might be saying. There's just times when you've got to grin and bear it. I mean, you've got to wake up the next day, right? In order to wake up the next day, you've got to have food in your belly, and et cetera, right? It's a system by which you're kind of kept in that emotional place. Oh, what's up, everybody? Suddenly, a bunch of people popped in. That's cool. No, I'm not post-op. What a strange question to ask a stranger. But anyway, nice to see a bunch of people popping in again. Dude, I heard about that at the coffee shop this morning. I was literally just still waking up, getting my coffee this morning, and one of the baristas, kind of off in the little kitchen area thing, says something about One Direction. And I'm like, oh, hi, man, I haven't heard that in forever. And she was like, oh, I mean, you're probably going to hear about him a lot because Harry Styles just died. Or somebody like that. Was it Styles? Or I thought it wasn't Harry Styles. I thought it was like fucking somebody else from One Direction. But anyway, I thought it was Liam, but maybe I'm wrong. Hey, Midnight Ghoul, I haven't seen you in forever. That's dope. I'm glad Midnight Ghoul's up in here. Yeah, so I heard fucking one of the dudes from One Direction died at like 9 this morning, and I haven't looked into it or looked up anything about it. I know that seems strange because I'm pretty sure those dudes are all super young, But I just it was such an awkward moment because I was like, "Oh yeah, man, I haven't heard about them in fucking forever." And this lady was like, "Well, I mean, yeah, they're one of them died, so that tends to happen." And it's like, "Oh, well, I don't watch the news in the morning, so I didn't hear about it." Liam Payne, no, Liam died. Harry just died. No way. Harry Styles just fucking died too. Isn't Harry Styles also of One Direction? Wait a minute. He's lying. Yeah, dude, I don't trust that a bit, bro. I'm gonna need a fucking I'm gonna need a fact check from a mod. Like Midnight Ghoul, I don't know if you're busy, but if you're not, maybe you can give me a fact check on Harry Styles. No, he didn't. Great. Awesome. Thank you for telling me. Right, ban that fuck. I'm just kidding. You have to do my bidding. But I hate it when people spread misinformation, dude. I was about to say, dude, this is the problem. This is why I need fact checked, right? Because I would have just fucking spun out on an entire conspiracy theory about what happened or about what is happening to One Direction. I'd be like, dude, they're killing them off, bro. There's something going on. We need to fucking figure out what this pattern is. There is a fucking serial killer targeting One Direction specifically, and eventually they're gonna start wiping out fans, dude. Now, luck for me, I was never a fan. Dude, I will be completely honest with you. I was never able to get into either One Direction or their solo shit. Even as a person who now in my older years, not I'm once again, I know I'm still young, but now that I'm like a grown ass woman, I kind of have opened up my music taste a little bit. And so I do listen to way more stuff than I used to listen to, but I never got into any of their stuff, including their solo stuff. So I just never learned much about them. So I have like no idea of what they look like in my head or anything. It was only Liam. Right on. From what age have you been woke, if you don't mind me asking? Oh man, this is such a weird question. So when you say woke, do you just mean like progressive or like what is implied by woke? Because when Republicans and people on the right use woke, they mean something a little bit different than when someone on the left uses woke. And both of those people mean something a little bit different than what apolitical people mean. Because there are still a few apolitical people out there that still use woke in the way that it was meant when you first started hearing it. When woke first started being used as a descriptor, all it meant is this person knows what's up. This person knows about the shit the CIA has declassified over the years. This person reads up on what the fucking news is. You know what I mean? This person is awake to the facts of reality, right? They're not cowed by any sort of religious pretext or any sort of adherence to a certain political party or faction. They're woke because they know they're awake and they know what's going on. They ain't asleep. They're not sleeping through the American dream anymore. They know they're alive and they're awake, right? That's what woke used to mean. Now, woke, if you're a Republican, woke seems to just mean like left of Reagan. And if you're a Democrat, woke seems to mean like SJW. And if you're an SJW, you know, it's kind of like more on my kind of tinge, maybe. Woke is like a slur. You know what I mean? It's like something you would say. It's not something somebody like with my particular sensibilities would ever use as an insult, but it's something that if we heard it directed towards us, we'd take as an insult because we would assume that we're being looped in and kind of grouped together with all of these standard line Democrats. That's something that I think a lot of people would object to on the far left, and I think that's why woke is interpreted as an insult by so many. That said, if the question is from what age have I been a leftist, I don't know, dude. 5 years ago, I would have told you that I used to be a little conservative kid when I was younger. But the truth of it is that if I think about it, I really didn't have much in the way of politics until I was like 18. Um, that said, my attitudes have always been kind of woke. I would have parroted the same sort of like libertarian esque shit that my dad was saying up until I was like 17 or 18. because my dad was kind of like into politics and news a little bit, and my mom wasn't. So my mom, I mean, you could never peg anything on her. Now that I've kind of learned more and I know what different political affiliations are and shit, I would say my mom's an anarchist, right? I would say she's like a post-left anarcho-syndicalist. But I didn't have the verbiage back then, and she certainly wasn't going to describe herself that way. So um, it was kind of harder to put a button on my mom's politics, and so I just mirrored my dad's for a long time. So I started like learning more stuff, and at first I started learning more stuff about the shit that I was talking all the time. It's like, okay, so where did libertarianism actually come from? Where did taxation is theft as an idea come from? And from there, I started learning. At first I started reading pro libertarian sort of articles and shit, and then obviously I wanted to see like, oh, okay, what does the opposition say? And the more I learned about the opposition, the more I felt I actually couldn't make up good arguments against the opposition. That I actually felt like held water within my own logical framework. And the more I found myself being kind of I didn't know the terminology at the time, but kind of a leftist, Um, and by, let's see, I would have turned 18 in 2016. So yeah, by the time I was 18, I was 100% on the left, like out as a Democrat or whatever you want to call it. I was openly allying myself with the Democrats. Now, I was doing that in furtherance of supporting Bernie Sanders. So you can see already at that point, I was pretty far to the left. Compared to like a normal run of the mill Democrat, but I think that's just as a result of my parents' raising, right? Libertarians are, maybe this is just love for my dad coming out because I think he's genuinely tends to be a good man, and I don't think he means harm with his positions. But I also think that maybe this is true. Libertarians, I often find, come off as leftists who never got a good economics class, or leftists who have never really gotten the chance to experience the benefits of a broad tax base. They're disappointed leftists. They're people who would 100% be on the left somewhere if the problem with the tax system was appropriately explained. Um, Now that said, I mean, there are people out there for whom my aforementioned father is one, like that. Um, they've got protests with the tax system outside of the idea of just turning around and having it spent better. When I bring that up to him, he always says, like, yeah, okay, so you make the right appropriations and you agree to spend it better. Who's directly overseeing that? How much corruption can they get away with before they're recalled by the people? Can we trust the people to actually recall them? And so my dad, to his credit, has way clearly thought about this way more than most libertarians do, and has actually had the argument with a bunch of people. And so, to his credit, he's got you know, better answers to those questions that I've posed than most libertarians that I've asked. But I mean, if you actually talk to my dad, I mean, he calls himself a conservative, but his ultimate political dream, if he could just make the world work the way he wanted it to work, is everybody would live in communes and we would all like farm and party together and take care of one another, take care of our old people together, and raise our children together. So, I mean, sounds like a hippie to me. I don't know about you. Do you support drag shows at schools? Well, I mean, that's the thing. Is like a drag show is drag is a really broad art form, right? You understand that drag is not just people that were born assigned male at birth dressing up in women's clothes and clothes that are super revealing and doing sexy dances on stage. That's just one type of drag show, right? Most drag shows are family friendly, just well, maybe not most, but I'd say a good 50% drag shows are family friendly just in general, regardless of where they're happening. There's just not anything you would really object to that hard. There's nothing you're going to see in that drag show that you wouldn't see on TV if you watched at the right time, Um, and at the, like extreme sort of mundane end of that, where you get to the, like, in that 50% where people are doing family friendly shows, there are people who could do I think someone could do a drag show for kids. Like, because centrally, all drag is meant to be is it's meant to be a temporary performance of femininity in furtherance of an audience reaction, right? And that can be done in a bunch of contexts, right? Like most drag queens have some sorry. I hate that fucking train. Anyway, most drag queens have some other thing that they're doing while they're doing drag, right? So they'll get up there and they might sing and play an instrument while they're as part of their performance, or they might do like a variety show thing where they do some juggling while they're telling some stand-up comedy, and then they play an instrument or something like that. It's usually not just them getting up there and being feminine, right? It's a little more than that. And if you're asking me, do I think someone could come up with a drag show that would be appropriate for children? The answer is 100% hell yes. Um, if you're asking me, do I think that would be a good use of children's time? I don't know. I'm not a fucking educator. Probably not. But not because it would be inappropriate to them, just because it's like, you're going to have to make it pretty educational for me to think you should waste 30 minutes of children's time that they could be spending learning about the periodic table to be watching a drag show. If they want to go watch a drag show, their parents can take them to a drag show after school, right? That's what I would say. But to me, it would be a pragmatic use of school funds and time matter, not a appropriateness matter. I would just assume that if you're doing content in front of children, that it's going to be ran. Which this is the thing, right? People will fearmonger about the idea that there's some sort of lewd display going on at schools. People are just powerless to do anything about it, or no one even knows what's going on. What people don't seem to realize is that, especially these days, you don't get on school property unless the principal wants you to be there. Just how it is. You don't get to be on school property if the faculty have decided you're a danger to the children or something. In order for you to get that sort of access, you've got to pass your plans through a couple of teachers' hands. You've got to pass it through the administration. They've got to agree to it. So much planning goes into having a fucking thing go on at a school. And keep in mind that this was true at my podunk ass little fucking Mississippi elementary school. So if this was going on at Glendale Elementary, a school that doesn't even exist anymore, you gotta know this shit is going on in even more complex ways in the modern schools of today's society, right? So what you're asking me is, like, kind of a malformed question. Did my last comment show up for you? Making sure I'm not triggering a filter. Let me see. Let me see. It did not. So. Okay, I didn't even see my comment now. I'll retype. Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah. And also, sometimes if you, like, blur out some of the things you're trying to say, sometimes it'll help. Hi, I'm so sorry I haven't been here. I've been extremely sick. Oh, okay. Honestly, Al, I was kind of, like, worried about you there for a while because I hadn't seen you in here. I was actually talking the other day about how, like, man, I haven't seen some of my regulars in here. I wonder, I hope they're okay. So it's good to hear from you again. Thank you. But yeah, I guess I support drag shows at schools not being criminalized, so I support them being allowed to do it under the current framework of having any event at a school, right? Anytime any sort of performer or something like that wants to do something for kids, it's got to go before the administration before they ever approve a fucking thing. And the administration's going to know about it before it ever comes to pass. So I think we should leave this up to the fucking. I think we should leave this choice between the, the performers and the administration of these schools. I don't think it's I don't think, because what a person is asking me when they ask me if I support something like that really is, would you support me going in with a gun to force people? This is that libertarian bent coming out of me. Would you support someone going in with a gun to break that up and force children not to watch it? And my answer is fuck no. That's way more traumatizing than just watching the fucking drag show if the fucking faculty and administration have already decided that it's fine and it's not going to lead to any fucking psychological harm. Um, they're asking if I would support people with guns having the implicit ability to fuck with you up to and including shooting you with that gun for the mere act of engaging in such a thing. And the answer to that is almost always, with anything that doesn't involve bodily harm to another person or long-term psychological harm or something like that, my answer is almost always going to be no. No. You got to come at me with some real fucking harm to society before I empower you with a gun to go solve any motherfucking problem. Sorry. I don't play with guns. And to me, anytime you're trying to make a law, anytime you're trying to prohibit some kind of conduct or manage some kind of behavior in a capitalist society, what you're really talking about, what that can be translated to effectively, is hiring mercenaries with guns to make things a certain way that you want them to be. And you're going to have to, in my opinion, you've really got to prove that that's going to lead to some real societal help. That's really going to be healthy for society. That's going to have a positive effect. Because I find that most of the things that are prohibited in this manner actually have a far more negative effect in their prohibition than their legality would have ever caused, right? More people have been harmed in the war on drugs than have ever been harmed by addiction. I just want you to think about that. More people have been harmed directly and indirectly by the war on drugs, law enforcement's refusal to focus on any other crime, than anybody ever would have been hurt by drug addiction. And drug addiction, by the way, has continued unabated and, in fact, has gotten significantly worse over the last 5 years, despite all of these anti-drug policies, despite social media cops bragging so loudly about their drug busts. There's always more plugs. There's always more money to be made. You're never going to catch them all. And more people have been harmed in the needless enforcement of these laws than would have ever been saved by not ever enacting the laws in the first place. Do you have a spiritual view, or is it too much of me trying to probe in your space? Honestly, that's honestly like a super fucking good question, and thank you a lot for considering that it might be personal. You know what I mean? Like, thank you for actually listening to the shit that I said earlier about the question that you asked and like internalizing that. I don't know if you're just being sarcastic, but if you're being serious, thank you for that, because that's genuinely like that's the type of shit I want to see. I believe humans are capable of great change, and most of them simply don't. It's something I heard from somebody else, but it's true. Do I have a spiritual view? Yes, 100%. I think most people do, even if they don't maybe recognize it as such. When people talk about spirituality, as a person who grew up in the Christian church, in a particularly like spirit-focused kind of type of Christianity too. I grew up a Pentecostal. As someone who grew up in that sort of church, I correlate spirituality with feelings of wonder, feelings of powerlessness and safety in powerlessness, perhaps. I associate feelings of of smallness in the face of the universe, so to speak. All of these things are things that Christianity, especially in its more zealous iterations, teaches and encourages. All of this is stuff that you will encounter in a Christian church. But those are all things that I have learned to those are all things that I've learned to cherish and encounter in my everyday life and to grow my experiences of those things, if that makes sense, to nourish them, right? So the sense of spirituality that I used to get from getting the Holy Ghost or um, sitting through a really good service and feeling emotionally moved at the end, or being in a really big church and just looking up at all the finery and all the architecture on the ceiling. Um, I get that same sort of wonder, right? From being at rainbow gatherings, from being out in the woods in general, from being at places like beaches, being places like swamps. Swamps really do it, dude. I think that's just an element of being Southern. There's something about a swamp, dude. I can just walk around with no noise at all playing. Like, normally, I'm a type of person, I like to have something going on in an earbud or just passively playing, even if I'm not paying that close attention to it. Dude, I will walk around in a swamp for hours silently, just in awe. Just in awe, dude. In awe. Longing for understanding I'll never be able to get. And I think in that way, I continue to have a spiritual experience despite being functionally an atheist at this point. Zero sarcasm. I didn't think so. It didn't come off as sarcasm, so I appreciate it for sure. Let me know if you can see my retyped comment. Oh, let's see. Went to the fair tonight with family. Ended with us running out in a crowd rush because of a pup. Oh my god, dude! Midnight Ghoul. That's like actually fucking like crazy shit. I have like a fucking crazy story now type material. Are like honestly, that's kind of like I would still be in shock, dude. I wouldn't be. I don't know that I'd be able to have a fucking chat if I was in your position, because, dude, or maybe I would be. Maybe that's exactly where I would go, honestly. But um, God, I hope you guys weren't close to it. That's fucked, dude. I tell you what, though, wish I could say that that'll have an effect, but it won't. Dude, it has become so rote in America to have people shooting up places that we don't even give a fuck anymore. I'll be shocked if I hear something about it in the news. Because, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. Okay, I guess it's not gonna explode. Dude, my fucking fat ass just fumbled a fucking lighter into a candle. I'm moving this candle, and um yeah, that just happened. Dude, that was wild. Dude, I have a torch somewhere in here. Somehow I got wax on myself. That's cool. Anyway, um it's become so rote in America to have school shootings that it's like we don't even recognize them as an issue anymore. They just happen. Our country reacts very briefly. We talk a lot of shit about passing gun control, and then we don't do anything about it for another 10 years until the cycle rolls around again. There for a while, we were pretending like we cared about it a whole lot. There for like 10 years. When's the last time you heard anybody advocating for gun control? You notice now, I'm not a big gun control advocate. I think that there are common sense gun reforms that you could do that would fix most of the problems that come from gun ownership. And I think in America, gun ownership is a fundamental part of our culture that should not be discouraged, because we do live in a more spread out, sort of rural, kind of balkanized society, maybe. Well, maybe that's not a good way to put it, but you know what I mean. Like, we're divided in a little bit at little states. We've popped off in the Civil War before. there's things to be worried about here that perhaps don't apply to other countries, and I understand why we have a robust gun culture, and I want to keep that gun culture. What I don't want to keep are the massive fucking shootings that seem to happen twice a week, every week for the last 10 years, right? And we all got numb to it like 2, 3 years ago. Whenever that big, the last big one I remember hearing about when people were actually talking about gun control in a big way was that, let me think here. It was that okay, someone remind me. The person who shot up a girls' school in Tennessee, was that after Uvalde or was that before? Because Uvalde is one of the most recent ones I remember. But that's the fucking sad thing, is that there have been more since then, and they've just all started to run together in my head because they become news stories for like 5 seconds and nothing ever comes of it. The most that ever comes out of it is fucking tweets. A minute ago, it's like I'm not a big gun control advocate, so this doesn't particularly bother me. But you'll notice that gun control is another one of those things that doesn't seem to be heavy on the Democrats' platform. You know what I mean? Um, I'm gonna rewatch the I've been rewatching the presidential debate between Kamala and Trump, and I'm really gonna listen hard and see if I just missed them talking about gun control. But I feel like I don't I feel like I couldn't find a single place where they did. Like I can't remember a single time that they brought it up. Maybe they did and I just missed it. Yeah, it was wild. My husband and his kid brother had just come from where it happened to meet back up with me, so I wasn't super close to it, I think, before. Yeah, so Uvalde would be the last one I remember then. But there's been more since then, right? Uvalde was just the last time that people cared about gun control in a mass way. But I'm glad to know you were relatively isolated from it. It sucks that your husband and kid from it were not though. That's or his kid brother rather. That's fucked. I mean, to be that fucking close to something like that. Hopefully they'll have access to counseling in the near future. Because dude, that's some brush with death shit. That's some like shit can go randomly one way and suddenly life is completely different for dozens of people. You know, that's one of those really like oh shit just got real type of moments for sure. Gun control is just the talking point now. Yep, exactly. It's something that Democrats bring up whenever somebody brings it up to them, but something that you will have noticed they stop bringing up on their own anymore. And you'll also notice that this is a huge fucking walk back from what everybody like. Okay, here's something that kind of burns my ass, right? I learned my lesson on Biden like a month into his presidency, right? I figured out, okay, yep, I made the wrong decision. This is just more of the same. I thought maybe there was a chance that he would have advisors around him that would be like maybe some like really young kind of leftist progressive kind of like hiding in the wings types. No, they were all just neo-libs just like him. And so I got sick of him quick, right? Um, but where was I going with that? Oh, right. People were telling me back then, right? Back when I first started talking about how Biden has turned out to be a complete shit on these matters. Um, People were steady telling me how how Joe Biden's positions are farther to the left than they would be because of Bernie Sanders, and how the Democratic Party's entire position has been moved left by Bernie Sanders. That's something Vosh was saying for a while. Um, and now, I mean, look how the cake has been cut. You know what I mean? Now it's the complete opposite. Now, like they've literally gone back on everything they adopted because of the popularity of Bernie. Do you know why they went back on everything they adopted because of the popularity of Bernie? everything they started talking about doing because of the popularity of Bernie. Does anybody want to hazard a guess as to why the Democratic National Convention, as a fucking, or National Committee, or whatever it's called, the DNC as an entity, because I'm not sure what it's called when you're talking about the entity. Think about why the DNC as an entity did not stick with those things. You can probably land on it if you think about it real hard. It's simpler than you think. There's two reasons, actually. Yeah, I don't know any details about injuries or whatever yet. Yeah, dude, I wouldn't expect you to. I mean, you're not a fucking journalist or anything, but like, that just sucks. I mean, I hope that there were a few injuries, and I hope that whoever did it was apprehended quickly, because that's about the best you can hope for in these situations, honestly. But yeah, does anybody know why the DNC has reverted to its 2015 takes and has actually gotten further to the right on certain issues? Does anyone know? Well, the reason is because, like I said, two things. Number one, they never had those positions in the fucking first place. They were always just attempts to get votes. They were always just a way to shore up an unelectable candidate. It was always cynical of them. And so there was no emotional attachment or stake to these positions to be fought with or fought over to get them changed. Number two, people gave up on Bernie Sanders' agenda. People gave up entirely on the ideas he was fighting for because the DNC stopped talking about them, because their fucking job as an entity is to turn your vote into meaningless trash and to turn hard working people's labor into cash for corporate owners and financial officers and other important officials and executives at the tops of these companies. They are just another arm of the same bourgeoisie political element that the Republican is, or that the Republicans are, rather. And as a result, they had a duty to their masters to shoot down the Bernie Sanders message. So what they did was they adopted it for a while to get a bunch of people thinking, you know what, I'm going with the DNC because look at all these politicians, that they're young and they're progressive and they're touting the same kind of shit Bernie Sanders is. Man, I'm with the DNC now, dude. They're way better than the fucking Republicans. I'm with them now, dude. It got a lot of people genuinely on their side. Didn't get a lot of the Bernie bros, but it got enough people to be like, you know what? Yeah, this party's got fucking good ideas. They're a fucking nice modern party. And then, once they had all those people implicated into the party, once they had all of those people sitting in there, then they started reverting back to their old positions and moving to the right, once again, as quick as they could, under our noses. And, well, under our noses, but still in front of our faces. And slowly became what are now essentially worse than Reagan Republicans. And they did, well, except on social issues, and really that's the only thing, right? And this has happened over the last 5 years, and we're really not, I think, seeing the foul fruits of this harvest until now. We're just now starting to see kind of the ill results of having the DNC switch up to gather a bunch of people into it, and then switch up again to try and gather a bunch of Trump people into it whenever they realize that their continued adherence to the status quo is actually not satisfying those droves of lefties, right? And so what has ended up happening, right, is that now the leftists of the United States don't trust the Democratic Party because they know that their job is to spoil their vote. Their job is to turn their vote into garbage. Their job is to turn their work into profits, just like the Republicans. They don't recognize a difference between them because there is hardly no difference between them. And the Republicans don't trust them because they know, just like leftists do, that Democratic positions are only as good as the way the wind is blowing that day. And as soon as that changes, their position will change too. Whereas the Republicans, good, bad, right, or wrong, they've stayed the party of big business their entire fucking existence. You know what I mean? Even before the party switch, the Republicans were they're like neither party really started touting the whole like little man populism shit until the party switch. That's what invented that sort of rhetoric in major American political parties at large. Now there were always certain members of these parties who would kind of tout that line and have that rhetoric. But as a whole, both parties were pretty openly interested in big business up until the party switch, when the Democrats started using a way more sort of populist rhetoric, and the Republicans kind of started they started preying on the success of the baby boomers, right? They started preying on the the embarrassed billionaire of the baby boomers. And long story short, you end up with this the Democratic Party is now a party most well known for its flip-floppery, most well known for its grinding people down into meat. And the Republican Party, like I said, good, bad, right, or wrong, agree with it, disagree with it, hate it or love it, is a party that's most well known for sticking to its guns when it comes to its basic core beliefs, even if they're retarded, and for sticking up for big business, right? And because you can look at that history and trace it far back, and because it's hard to see entire, hold on, because it's harder to look at Republican politicians and see them just obeying a constantly shifting party line. It's easier for a lot of Republicans to just keep voting for them because they feel like, well, even if I like the Democratic Party in its current incarnation, I ain't going to like it in 4 years. And so the Democrats have set up a problem for themselves, which, I mean, hey, this makes me super glad I'm not a fucking Democrat anymore. They've set up a problem for themselves where the left doesn't want them because they're untrustworthy, and the right doesn't want them because they're untrustworthy. Nobody in this country that's politically active actually trusts them except the people that are already benefiting massively from their existence. Let me read the chat. I missed a few. Hello, and also, oh, hello, Frey. How are you doing? I'm sorry I didn't respond to your DMs, by the way. It has been such a fucking crazy day. So, here, let me just lay it all out for you guys. And especially because, they're here. I'm just going to lay it all out for you guys, right? So, I woke up this morning, and honestly, it was a great day. I'm not complaining necessarily, but I woke up this morning and pretty much was like instantly like, I got to go. Because we had to wake up and I had to take Silas to work at 10:30, but we wanted to leave a little bit early so that they were getting there on time properly because they've been worried about that. And I've been trying to show more effort into making sure that things happen on the time schedule that they prefer them. I've been trying to make more allowances for the correlation of our cohabitation. I don't know if that makes any sense, but anyway, I had to get up early in the morning, and that was actually kind of nice. Got up. I was pretty well rested. That was cool. Took Silas to work, and then instantly had to do like an hour and a half worth of running, right? So I took Silas to work and then went straight from getting from fucking Pizza Hut to fucking the co-op, right? The co-op in the little town near me where we get all our fucking feed because it's like 75% cheaper than fucking Tractor Supply. It's also like manufactured within 100 miles of here, which is nice. So went through there, right? I got like probably like 250 pounds of feed. In fact, I think it was exactly 250 pounds of feed. And then went straight from there to the coffee shop because Silas really wanted some coffee because they got paid last night, and it's a good little like self reward for the 2 weeks of good honest labor. And I support them doing things like that. I always thought that sort of thing is good. You don't do it in excess, but it's good to let yourself know this is why you work so hard. So I get them some coffee, bring it over there. Great, that's done. Already I've spent like 30 minutes because waiting at the coffee shop and waiting at the co-op and then getting the fucking feed and all the drive time. Already it's been like half an hour. So it's already like 11:10. And then I'm in Tractor Supply. It takes me like 30 minutes to find the blue coat, which is this antiseptic spray you use for when you're like dressing a wound or something on a farm animal. It took me forever to find that, and then I had to message Silas and be like, "Hey, um, unless I want to take my daily payout, I'm gonna have to like you might have to like cash out me something so I can get this blue coat." And they were like, "Cool," but they didn't see the message for like 15 minutes. So I was just like walking around Tractor Supply Co. like, "Doo-da-doo, doo-da-doo, 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 anything to do. And eventually I made my way to the bathrooms, noticed I have a bulletin board. Now I've got an idea for how to advertise my bread business, so that's cool. But finally, they send me the money. I get the fucking blue coat. I drive home. And dude, it was it was basically go, go, go for a solid like 4 hours while. So I got home at like 12 and I stayed working until I sent you that, I sent um, Frey that message earlier. They know what I mean. And I literally, that had been the first time I'd gotten to sit down in like 4 hours because as soon as I got home, we started working in the barn, gathering up the ducks that are going to be traded to one of my dad's, basically my dad's best friend. He gave us 4 hogs the other day, so we're giving him a bunch of ducks that he gave us the eggs to hatch out for and shit. And we're also giving him one of our hogs so that he's got an unrelated boar. Long story short, we had about 4 hours worth of work to do, and most of it got done pretty quickly. But it was just like, this task is done. It only takes 30 minutes, but then you've got another one after this. We had to build a trough for the pigs. We had to gather up all the ducks, gather up all the roosters that we're not keeping and isolate them. Get every fucking wing on every piece of poultry that we're keeping clipped, which was a real fucking hassle. The only ones that aren't clipped at this point are the ducks. Because they're domestic ducks, they're too heavy to fly anyway. So, let's see. What the fuck was I doing after that? I was doing some kind of work in the fucking barn. I don't even remember now. But then I went to pick Silas up from work. We went right from work to the spring to get some water. Went right from getting water home, and pretty much as soon as I got home, my dad asked me if I wouldn't mind doing the kitchen tonight because he had to go sit with my grandmother, and I was like, yeah, of course, duh, yeah. And so I did that, and then I had some ground beef sitting out for supper. Not really sure what I was going to do with it, and I figured, well, maybe Mom will have an idea when she gets home. And she got home, she didn't really have any ideas, so eventually I was like, fuck it, I'll just make hamburger patties, and I'll have those hamburgers. But about halfway through making hamburgers, I realized, well, number one, I've got a lot of burgers here, and they're pretty small. Number two, I've got all of the makings for a really good Salisbury steak night, or whatever that's called, where you do the brown gravy and you've got the like fried up onions and mushrooms in there. So I got all the burgers done, and then I fried up some mushrooms and onions in the. Damn it, motherfucker! Anyway, words. God damn it. I'm sorry, y'all. Cat hair keeps getting in my fucking face, and it's just bothering me. Anyway, so, so halfway through making the burgers, I decided I'm making Salisbury steaks or hamburger steaks, whichever one it is. And that was cool because Salisbury steaks fit way better with the side that I was making than burgers, because we didn't have any white russet potatoes. We just had little red potatoes, and they don't make good fries, right? They just don't. But they do make great fried potatoes. So I made some really good home fried potatoes with some loose onions in there. It was honestly, even though it was a meal that was just like, I had no plans on making supper tonight. It was not in my wheelhouse of things to do today, but I ended up doing it. And even though it took me like 3 hours to get everything finally done and put up and then eat and everything, etc., I'm still glad I did it, because I proved to myself that that I'm a red light performer even when it comes to cooking, and that's nice. It's good to know, and that's a skill I'm going to have as a parent. So I was proud of myself. I saw the challenge to myself, but that's why I haven't gotten back to you all fucking day, because it has been go 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 from the time I woke up, and I felt like I wanted to do one of these so that I could like vent some of this shit to just some total strangers. I didn't even think this was even going to get any views, because a lot of mine haven't been doing that great lately for whatever reason. Like the last 3 days or whatever, it's been like 2, 3, 400 views. That's fine. I mean, hey, I feel privileged to get even that many. But I had 5,500 the other night, and it was just some random title like every other one. So I have no idea what I did differently then versus what I'm doing now. But um, this one actually turned out to have more people in it, so that's nice. My the voicing of my exhaustion was heard by many, so that's cool. Let me read it now. I gotta head out. Super tired. My meds are kicking my ass. Have a good night, peeps. Well, you have a good night too. You have night too, Midnight Cool. It's good to see you. God damn it. Man, Mellow 429 was just mad, dude. And he only gave him a timeout. That's fine. Dude, this is why I love Frey, because they know. They're God, sharp as attack, that one. DMs are just spiums. Spiums, yes. There's no existence. It's all just jiggly stuff for the people in purgatory. Ducks are cucks, hogs are pogs. Decoded. Ducks are cucks, dude. Literally, every other member of the fucking poultry family, right? Every other member of Galliforms will fucking chase off another animal that's or not. I'm sorry, another like thing with a penis of its species that's fucking a thing with a vagina of its species. Not ducks though. I don't know. Like they'll just like pile on. Now, if you've got too many drakes in one pen, they instead of like chasing one another, at least my ducks, maybe this is different with other people's ducks, they'll just one hen, which is one of the reasons we had to get rid of so many fucking ducks. We had too many. Because they'll just pile on one hen, and they're like, let me get a chance, let me get a chance, let me get a chance, I want a chance too. None of them are actually like pushing each other away. They're all just like, dude, it's kind of beautiful, really, but I mean, then you'll see the drake just like standing like 10 feet away, that's like looking at it, and just like rhythmically like he's hypnotized. He's just what's it called, rasping, which is what drakes do. They can't quack, so they go the quack everyone associates with ducks, fun fact, only made by female ducks. Only made by female ducks. So the that noise, only a female duck makes that noise. Only a hen. Drakes are incapable of making that loud noise. They will instead make a noise that sounds like or like it's hard to do, honestly. It's a really hard impression to do. But yeah, they are cucks. They are in fact cucks. Hogs or pogs? I don't know about that one. Some hogs are definitely pogs, though. Ducks are cucks. It is truth. I have spoken the dark truth of the universe. And I don't even know if you realized how true it was when you spoke it. I mean, that's the beauty of it, right? Is that you can speak a dangerous idea or a crazy idea or a wonderful idea. We were talking about that word earlier. You can say you can talk about a wonderful idea and not even really conceive of it as such when you say it. Like, I wonder if the dude who shot Franz Ferdinand and started World War I or World War II or whichever one it was, I wonder if that dude realized that when he said to his comrades or whatever, "That's Franz Ferdinand," I wonder if he realized that he was setting off the events that would invent the modern world. You have to assume he didn't, right? You have to assume that he just kind of thought he was being like a cool anarchist. But no, he was inventing the modern world with a single fell swoop. That which I speak becomes true. Reality bends to me. That's cool. I hope so. That would be a nice reality to transition to, yeah. That would be a cool superpower to figure out that you had. And I mean, honestly, that is kind of true. I don't even know if you mean it in that way now that I think about it, because you know what? To a certain degree, reality is whatever you make of it. This is speaking of dangerous ideas, here's one. Reality is what you make of it. If you decide that it is true that aliens exist, that ghosts exist, that the CIA hired psychics and actually got something from it, if you choose to believe those things and live your life as if they're true, there's nothing bad that's going to happen to you as a result of that, really. I mean, like, as long as you're not too weird about it, right? You'll keep your job as long as you're not talking to every fucking customer who comes in about it. You can you can have a completely different perception of reality than another human being, and to you it is as true as anything can be because it's all that you can see and detect. You can also modify that within your own brain with practice and intention. You can choose how you perceive things. What a blessing that is, but what a curse as well. We can choose, right? A fox can't choose how it perceives something that a fox perceives as danger. It's simply going to perceive it as danger. But a human being can train itself to perceive danger as thrill. Everyone has it. That's kind of what I was thinking. That's kind of what I was thinking. I feel like, Frey, you're gonna have to tell me if I'm wrong, right? But I feel like we might be on a similar wavelength on this one. Am I picking up what you're putting down, or am I putting down what you're picking up? The reality you occupy is a model created by your brain. And to the extent that you control your brain, you control the model, thus reality. Yes, exactly. This is why I love you, because that was so fucking well put. Way better put than I could put it. Let me just read that again with clarity. The reality you occupy is a model created by your brain. And to the extent that you control your brain, you control the model, and thus reality. Exactly. The reality of it is, you have no control, really, no direct control over most of what happens out there in the world. The only thing you've got really any direct control over is what happens inside your own brain. And as a result of that, you can train yourself to rewire all sorts of experiences to be different things, and you can engineer a reality for yourself that is more pleasurable than the one you actually occupy. And I think a lot of people engage in this and would lie about it if asked, or maybe don't realize they engage in it. But I think it's a thing that's engaged in by a lot of people. I think a lot of people spend a lot of their lives engaging in the practice of creating a reality for their brain that is more comfortable than whatever actual reality might be, and then making their decisions in accordance with that. Being able to admit it is, in my opinion, in my book, it's a sign of someone capable of careful introspection, because you've got to really think about this shit to realize, like, I'm responsible ultimately for how I see things. If I look at this one way, it will be that way, at least for me. And if I look at it another way, it will be that way, at least for me. And there's nothing anyone else can do to impinge upon that thought in my head. And that is really the only experience that you have to ultimately contend with. Because at the end of the day, you can always close your eyes. And even if you can't close your eyes, your brain, most people's brains have this beautiful ability to paint over and to completely go inwards. Despite ostensibly looking somewhere, you can totally list off into another world where your brain is seeing things that you're not seeing with your eyes, but your mind's eye is seeing them. And I genuinely believe that some people might be capable of making those experiences so real for themselves so as to feel the stings of the bees and the feeling of the grass and the taste of the milk and honey in their mind. That's the reality of the left slope. The reality of the right slope is both less and more perceptual, since the right slope is a realm of pure potentiality and thought forms, sometimes called the astral plane. I think I'm going to request an explanation of this left and right slope at some point. This is an interesting idea, for sure. An interesting idea. I think I need to be a little bit higher for it, though. I drew you a diagram. Cool. Thank you. Once again, I'm really sorry I haven't responded all day. I'll try to respond before I go to bed. At least check it out. If I got time to do this, I got time to check. So I'll look at the diagram, because I think that'll bring more context and clarity to the subject for sure. See, dude, hold on, because I'm gonna cough. I don't know if I'm a believer in the idea of the astral plane, but I also know that I'm not a disbeliever. What do you call a belief for which you don't know that it's true, but you have a theory that it might be true, and you recognize that your limited human faculties aren't really equipped to rationalize how it might be true? Is that still an agnostic? Because if so, I think I might be agnostic towards the idea of an astral plane, but like positive, negatively agnostic, maybe is the way to put it, because I'm pretty convinced, and it's not going to make any sense to a lot of people, and that's because I try to be a pretty rational, logical person that tries to base my feelings about things in what I see as observable reality, right? Which I recognize is really just a filter of my own perception. Um, but be that as it may, that's my human limitation. I try to work with it as best I can. But I can't rationalize this feeling that I have that there is some more to the human experience besides just chemicals firing off and decisions being made at the genetic level. I think that it's maybe more than possible that our brains, being the collective powerhouses that they are of information processing and, uh, you know, projection of will and shit, being those sorts of instruments that they are, I think it's more than possible that something like an astral plane being a sort of fifth dimension to our world that maybe we only have access to in specific ways. Maybe we only have access to in, under certain conditions. But the idea of that existing as an outgrowth of our complex sentient brains, to me, doesn't sound that absurd. But when I tell that to other people, they think, so you just think like our brain generated enough energy for there to be an astral plane? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I guess, basically. It's like, well, can you prove it? And it's like, well, no, but it's not meant to be. It's a fucking thought experiment. And even if it's not, even if I do believe it, what does it affect anybody to think? Like, I'm not trying to, I would never try and base a government decision off of my astral reading of a situation, but I might base a personal decision off of it, and what does that affect anyone but me, you know? So I'm just going to come out and say it. I think there's probably an astral plane. I'm just going to admit that I wasn't kayfabing or anything. I love that word, by the way. You all introduced me to it, and I'm going to keep on using it for the rest of my life. But I wasn't just bullshitting when I said I'm a panpsychist in Abandoned Hope recently. I really am, dude. That idea, I love it. I love it. I don't give a shit if it's logical, if it makes any sense on a quantum level or physical level. To me, that's irrelevant. The idea of it is appealing enough and harmless enough for me to adopt it as a philosophy, if not scientific fact. You call that a belief because can't you say the same about this reality? You call that a belief because can't you say the same about this reality? Yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing. Is like, really, you don't know anything, right? You believe things if you really get down to it. Really, to know something is to be overly sure to the point of folly. I don't call it the astral plane, I call it potential, or the right slope. But that is only a filter of my perception. No, I didn't say you call it the astral plane. No, but you did say it's sometimes called the astral plane, and in that way, I think I agree with you. But maybe I do kind of believe in a bit more of a supernatural element to it than you do. Who knows, you know? But it's not something I talk about a lot because I do think it's sort of a demerit to my being taken seriously as any sort of person who thinks about scientific shit, you know? And not that I expect it to be taken very seriously anyway, but I think it doesn't help my case that I got some superstitions. But be that as it may, the world of potential definitely exists. The world of potentialities and you said thought forms. I'm not sure if that's uh, easily defined intuitively, but assuming that it is, that 100% exists. That is just clear, right? Everything that happens can be seen as evidence of a potentiality being fulfilled. So the world of potentialities is 100% real. That is much less up for debate, I think. You could call it imagination. I think the South Park Imagination Land episode actually explains it very well. Okay, I'll try and I'll probably have to sail the seven seas to find it, but I'll do it. Fuck it. A South Park episode to learn something. Are mental constructs or energetic entities created by focused thought, often believed to manifest intentions, emotions, or desires in esoteric and occult practices. So let's see here. The forms of mental constructs are thought often believed to manifest intentions or desires in esoteric and occult practices. Okay, cool. Okay, that's a fucking new one on me, but that's actually a really cool idea. The idea that if I focus and hone my thoughts and intentions in the correct way, I can manifest something that will exist in this, that will kind of exist in this other form that's not immediately perceptible to me, but that will have, but that could possibly have effects in my life that could um, manifest things through. See, what I've always wondered is for belief systems that include some form of magical will or magical expression of will, I guess I should say. Is it what is the mechanism by which that is done? And by that I don't mean like explain magic. I just mean like if a thought form was to influence an event, I'm assuming it would not like move something in the real world or some shit like that. It's not going to be like a poltergeist. I'm assuming it would be like using its own energy to kind of relentlessly browbeat the thoughts of another person and maybe fill their minds with doubt about the decision that they're going to make or something like that. I'm assuming that that's the mechanism by which it's theorized to work, right? Or something similar. Since you seemed unfamiliar with the word esoteric, let me quickly define it. Esoteric refers to knowledge or teachings intended for or understood by a small specialized group, often dealing with obscure, mystical, or hidden subjects that are not widely known. I don't know how. I don't know what I did to seem like I didn't know what esoteric meant, but yeah, no, I know what esoteric meant. I probably said it weird, but that's probably just for the fact that I say a lot of shit weird. But I don't know. But yeah, no. I probably wouldn't have defined it as well as that did, but I mean, yeah, that's what I would assume esoteric to mean. It's um, like if somebody is an expert on a very particular type of rocket design and they're really good at that particular part, you might say that they've got esoteric engineering knowledge. I think that would be a correct use of that word in context. Actually, I'm less familiar with the word occult than I am esoteric. Occult, I kind of know what that means. At least I know what associations it has in the media. I don't really know what's being attested to when someone says that they believe in occult practices necessarily. I know some things that that's associated with, and it from what I can tell, it seems like goth paganism, but I'm assuming that there's more to it than that. I'm assuming that there's some sort of thing that differentiates occultism from other types of religious practice or other types of spiritual practice or other types of philosophical practice or whatever the case may be. Like I know when people talk about Aleister Crowley, they say he's an occult figure. I know when people talk about Anton LaVey, they describe him as an occult figure. The limitations of thought forms are debatable. Some would say they can influence events and even manipulate matter, but I don't know what I believe in that regard. That's what I would be wondering. I know what I believe in that regard 100%. I know what I 100% believe. I believe that genuinely focused and intended thought can manifest into something that can use its own energy to create a change in another person's mindset through pressure that they don't even realize is not coming from within themselves. I'm confident believing that because I think that that just neatly explains so many things that have happened, not just in my life, but in general. Um, and people just have some completely inexplicable change of heart, and you can't explain it. It doesn't seem like it should happen, but it does. Or like when I was homeless, this type of shit would happen all the time, right? I'd be having a really bad day, I'd be having a really bad week, I was just not making enough to get anywhere, and I was just fucking miserable. And I would sit there for like 10 minutes just thinking, someone will give me enough money to get the fuck up out of this town today. It's gotta happen. It's gonna happen. And just like thinking about that for 10 minutes, right? And then my brain would move on. I'd play another song and I'd go on about it, right? But without fail, every fucking time that happened, I fucking got enough money to get up out of that town. So I don't know. Is that fucking causation? Is that fucking false correlation? I don't fucking know. You be the fucking judge. What I know is that believing that that works has had a positive effect in my life. So I'm going to keep doing it. I wish I had known some of the language for this shit, dude. Honestly, my mom is a witch, and she's not like she's not like a TikTok picked it up 3 years ago witch. She's like somebody's been like calling herself a witch and reading about what she would probably call the occult and pagan practices and witchcraft in a broad sense since the 80s. So she's got a little bit more cred than the TikTok witches tend to, you know what I mean? And um, because she was at various points in her life forced to get rid of some of her witchery books, she doesn't remember as much, I guess you could say. It's like she hasn't had as much exposure to it and doesn't remember as much of the language. So there's a lot of stuff that I've known about in concept only until now, or until recently, or until some point in my life, you know? Many magicians believe that magic is 100% psychological. Others believe it is spiritual. I believe that both interpretations are likely missing some element. I think that's a good assessment. Yeah, I mean, I think they are missing some kind of element, right? Maybe that's I don't know. Paul's been talking a lot about the Tao lately. Maybe it's the Tao. Maybe it's something else. Who knows? Like maybe it's a common thread of psychological energy shared by all human beings. I don't know. I could sit here and theorize about it all day long. Um, but what I think, what I think is that it's about 50-50. Maybe 49.5 and 49.5, because I think you're right. There's something missing. Something doesn't quite feel right with the idea that it's either how'd you put it, that it's um either spiritual or psychological. I feel like there is a missing element. I feel like I detect something missing in both of those explanations, right? Because if you're just going to take it as spirituality, then you've got to find some reason why the psychological explanations just happen to line up so neatly. And if you're going to take it as all psychological, you've got to find fucking some way to explain how the fuck some of this shit could possibly happen, but does, you know? And I think that missing piece, I don't think it's a huge piece of the puzzle, maybe, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm thinking it's like 1% of the answer, but maybe it's like 90% of the answer, and the other two are like 5% each or something. Many chaos magicians incorporate the Tao in their practice. Oh, that's actually cool. That's actually really fucking cool. You know what? I've been fucking debating for a while now because ever since I was a kid and heard about the Tao Te Ching, I wanted to read it. I think I'm gonna because it's not apparently a long read at all, and apparently it's available for free on YouTube. So I'm just gonna do it. Fuck it. I need to. It's uh it's a horizon of mine that needs broadened for sure. But it from what little I've heard about it so far, it sounds like something that I could see chaos magicians incorporating into their practice. It seems it's it's kind of cool that you guys as two both of y'all's two spiritual practices kind of complement each other in that way. I love life. Life is so beautiful. I came in here so depressed and so disappointed, and I guess I'm still kind of overcome with an overall, kind of pall of that, but still, I feel better. I like these conversations. I haven't read up on that yet, but my recent experiences have given me a bit of crash course. Yeah, I would imagine for sure. Um, I would definitely imagine. I recommend Condensed Chaos by Phil Hine too. Condensed Chaos, Condensed Chaos, Condensed Chaos. Okay, I'll try and remember that. Condensed Chaos. Cool. Righteous. I want to learn more, bro. I mean, I always do, but I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, I want a fucking library card again because I don't have one. A big part of the reason I don't have one down here is because I've just been like, for a long time, I've been like feeling like I'm too transient to have a library card in a given place. I've still got my old ass library card from like 4 towns ago, though, from the town I grew up in. So I guess I could always go to that library, but that's like fucking 4 hours away. So I just want to get a library card in my area and start reading through as much shit that interests me as I can get at that library. And it's a pretty fucking library, especially for a Mississippi library. So I think I'll be able to find quite a bit of shit there. you know, knowing that my kid is on the way puts me in this position where for the first time in my life I feel like I've got more impetus than just myself to improve my life, And it's probably the most pathetic fucking motivation you guys have ever heard in your life. Right now, a big motivation for me in what I want to do and what I want to be. Obviously, a lot of it's like just desire in general and like comfort, but a lot of it too, the way in which I want to see that done, I guess, is rooted in I want to be a cool fucking parent, man. I want to be one of those parents that when kids make friends, they're like, super eager to have their friends come over because they know it's gonna be fucking hella fun. We're gonna let them fucking ride the go-kart. We're gonna sit out there and watch them, make sure they're safe, and we're gonna let them fucking have sleepovers and stay up a couple of nights in their fucking life, stay fucking playing video games and shit, dude. Like, I'm not gonna go crazy with my kids, letting them do everything in the world. But one thing that was in my childhood that I want to be in my kids' childhood, and one thing I think it benefited me, was the fact that my parents were not the hardest of hard asses. They were hard asses if I started not doing what I was supposed to do. But as long as I was basically doing what I was supposed to do, as long as I was behaving well and meeting their expectations for me, I was I was allowed to like do some crazy shit, like I was given pretty broad leverage, and especially like the older I got, the more true that got. Like by the time I was like 16 or 17, it's like if I wanted to have somebody over and we wanted to fucking have a sleepover or whatever, I didn't even really have to ask my mom. Every so often she would say something about it and be like, hey, maybe tonight's not a good night. But usually it'd be fucking fine. Not that it happened that often, but it was something that was open to me. And like whenever I smoked weed with one of my friends for the first time, it wasn't a big deal in her mind, because I was like fucking 15 and she was like, I mean, that's what age I was when I started smoking with my friends, so I don't really see much of an issue with it as long as you're not driving or some shit. And I was like, that's pretty fucking fair. And eventually I broke that rule, but um that was after reading somewhere that it doesn't seem to make that much of a difference whether someone is uh eh, people are going to say I'm wrong for this, but it does not seem to make much of a difference for most people, whether you're sober or high on cannabis, uh, as far as being a good driver. If you're a good driver sober, you'll usually be a better driver on cannabis, for most people. Now, I'm sure because I said that, somebody's going to come at me with some sort of, and maybe they'll be right. So maybe I'm just way wrong on this position, and I'm always willing to be. But um, in my experience, the people that I've known who, um, smoke weed while they drive either the same or actually kind of better when they're a little stoned. Although people 100% drive way worse when they're actually smoking. You know what I mean? So I will say that there is something about uh, distracting yourself in that way, because weed is kind of meant to be a pass between each other sort of experience. It's sort of meant to be like a social thing, and doing it while you're actively driving does put your brain under more pressure than doing it while you're not driving and then waiting like 20 minutes and then uh, you know hop into the car to go to the grocery store or some shit. That said, I'm not saying you should fucking smoke and drive. Don't smoke and drive. Do as I say, not as I do. Wanting prosperity for your progeny is hardly a pathetic motivation for self-improvement. Well, it's not even so much prosperity as I guess it's a form of prosperity. It's social prosperity, right? It's I want them to have access to like a good life, I guess, in all ways. What that means for their social situations is like I want them to have enough money to go to the bowling alley if they want to with their friends a couple of times a month. You know what I mean? Or maybe even a couple of times a week if we live close enough, or whatever. Like I want them to have access to enough land for them to feel like they've got room to roam, the ability to get like a little fucking dirt bike if they want it, or a little four wheeler if they want it. And not because I think the thing is that important, but because I think the experience of being a country kid, getting to ride around in the fucking great blue yonder and discover little spots you don't feel like anybody's ever been to before. I see what an empowering thing that is in people's lives. I experienced it myself, and I want my kids to have that. And more, that's more about preparing them for properly socializing than it is about having them have material things. If we were all, if this was 50 years ago, I would be um, I would just be planning on like let's say it was 50 years ago, right? I'd have a couple of horses because I'd have to have, well, maybe not 50 years ago, but let's say 75 years ago before my family bought the tractor. Um, Talking about the same farm, right? I would have had horses. And so if I was trying to do the same thing for my kid, the idea would have been, well, I'm going to get him a pony. So that way they can start riding really early and start learning really early. And then as they get bigger, they can transition to a full horse. It's not about the thing itself so much as it is preparing them for the social aspect of growing up, growing up in a fun and unique way. No, and maybe not even unique is the word I'm looking for, because honestly, that sort of childhood is not all that unique. But it is a good childhood. It was a fun fucking childhood, and it's something a lot of people are sadly deprived of due to economics. But I didn't think this about myself 5 years ago, but now I kind of think I might have the gumption to not be fucking, you know, maybe not be broke my whole life, you know? Um, and if that's the case, the world is my oyster as long as I'm not dead set on something, right? And I find myself more and more kind of catalyzing what I really want out of life, what I really want out of my child's life. And what I want out of their life and my life more than anything is a quiet, private place to live, abundant nature, a career that fulfills me, hobbies that I'm able to, like I would like to be able to pursue music in a more honest and genuine way, and I would love to pursue video creation in a more honest and legitimate way, because right now, I'm limited to a fucking like a webcam and shit. Now, you know, as one saves, one's able to get stuff like that, right? So it's not like I'm prevented from any of this, right? I'm not putting it that way. I'm just saying that all of these things are things that I think I would have had a real problem telling you time last year. What do I want out of life? What do I legitimately want? I would have been able to come up with one thing. And hey, that one thing was better than a year before that when I couldn't have told you a fucking thing. But I could come up with one thing, which is I want a place where I can shut the fuck up for 5 minutes at 3 a.m. and not hear a goddamn peep. And I pretty much have that here, kind of, but I still want that. But it's become crystallized into something that can be described with much more colorful language at this point. Really, there's things I want to change about the world too, but and once again, I know I'm still young, but as I get older, like as I get closer to having a kid, as I get closer to my 30s, as that happens, the more I start to think I clearly don't have any actual effect on the works of all this as much as I want to. And maybe through my actions, and honestly, the conclusion I've come to is that the only way I can affect those things, the only way I can see them meaningfully change is by changing them in my area, and I've got to change it in my life before then. You know what I mean? Like, the conclusion I've come to is that I should stop focusing so much on what I want out of the world, because that is always going to disappoint me. I'm a pessimist by nature, and I'm a radical leftist by politics. And so the very fact that I live in a country will dissatisfy me. So I must learn to teach myself not to, or I'm sorry, I must teach myself to not rely on that sort of feedback loop anymore. You know what? I'm really glad I've had this fucking realization on stream. I'm really fucking thankful we've had this conversation. Thank you so much for your insightful comments and the months at this point of insightful conversation. It's been really wonderful, because I feel like I just I feel like I just got over something I've been worrying about for the better part of 10 years. Or maybe I set myself on the path of getting over it, is a better way to put it. You know, there's a passage from the Bible that I keep thinking about. It says, I might be butchering it, and maybe it's not a quote from the Bible at all, but merely something that the Jehovah's Witnesses my mom used to study with used to just say. But do not fear the coming of Christ. Do not fear the end of days. It will come like a thief in the night. And what I take that verse to mean is that you cannot and will not control when this shit collapses, right? I'm an atheist, so I don't believe in the Christian idea of God. And I'm like a soft atheist too. I think I'm only an atheist because I lack the language and perhaps the intelligence to adequately describe whatever sort of supernatural energy exists out there, if any. But I certainly know that it's not described by the Bible. That's obvious, right? We can all agree there. But that said, as someone who was just raised, born and bred in Christianity and boiled in it my whole life, I still tend to look at things through that lens. I was watching an interview with so this is a digression, but I was watching an interview with a nun the other day, and I was legitimately kind of shocked, because we have very similar mannerisms and we've got very similar attitudes, and I was like, should I join a convent? I would be a good nun. Anyway, as long as I can join a convent where they'll let me smoke, I think I could legitimately make it as a nun. Anyway, fuck, now I lost my train of thought. Maybe if I hit my vape, it will come back. In a dream, I saw you as a prosperous tea farmer, mostly floral teas. I am not going to lie. I have much desired this. That's not what Galadriel said, but that is the way she said it. Dude, it would have been so fucking funny. It would have completely ruined the scene, right? But I wish that there was a blooper reel where Galadriel said, instead of saying, she says something like, I do not deny, my heart is greatly desired. But what if she had instead said, I ain't gonna lie, my heart has greatly desired this. Like I said, it would have ruined the scene, but that would have been a great blooper reel. Anyway, it's funny though. I could actually see myself doing that, legitimately. Like, that's the thing about farming, is that you can go any direction you want with it. And I mean, we're doing an unconventional form of farming here. I mean, honestly, like the way we plant is not the way most people around here plant their gardens, especially their food gardens. We've got what's called a garden, but it's a huge container garden. It's like 7 or 8 times the size of people's like little patio with their containers on it, right? It's like an entire fucking front yard taken up by big old box planters and big old planting beds and shit. And it's just filled with fruit and veggies and peppers and eggplants and all this other crazy shit, right? And that's an unconventional farming method, right? But we're also working on several other sort of unconventional things that we'll be doing. Like, um, we raise a bunch of herbs. Most people that farm don't raise their own herbs. Like, people that have kitchen gardens sometimes do, but it's very common for people to just not even think about that, because herbs are so easy to get and so cheap at the supermarket. But they're even cheaper if you just buy the seeds and grow them yourself. Who would have thunk, right? So we've got a beautiful little herb garden. Every pasta sauce I've made in the last 3 months, I've used fresh herbs to make it, which I don't know about you. I feel like it really does something for the quality of the sauce. Um, I just love it, especially because like the freshness of them allows them to, like, rosemary leaves, for example, and sweet basil. We've got sweet basil out there. You can smell the sweetness on sweet basil when you pick it, and it adds a delicate, lovely touch of sugar that I'm sure I could amplify with half a carrot cut up in there and sautéed when I'm sautéing the onions and bell peppers. So I do a weird sort of like I do a weird sort of Cajun Italian trinity. I don't know how to even to put it. It's it's not, I guess it's not, well, here's the thing, right? The the part I think makes it kind of like Holy Trinity-ish in my head is the fact that it's got two ingredients out of the Holy Trinity, right? Only one is missing. The only one that's missing is celery, and it's replaced with a little bit of garlic. But like, I serve my spaghetti sauce or my pasta sauce or my pizza sauce. I I make the fucking same tomato sauce for every fucking red sauce needing product that I make, and that's just something I picked up from Italian restaurants, dude. The people that do that professionally use, they got two sauces. Pick one. The delivery vehicle is really what you've got choice in. Um, but and so I make the same sauce for everything, right? But that said, it's a delicious sauce, and the fact that it can be added to so many different things means you can take the flavors in so many different directions. You could turn it into a lasagna sauce, and it would be perfect. You could turn it into a pizza sauce. It's been perfect. Use it as a spaghetti sauce. Been perfect. Penne sauce. Perfect. Doesn't matter. You can use it for anything. Pizza sauce for pizza burgers. Do it. Doesn't matter. Super proud of those sauces. But it starts off with sweet bell pepper. Actually, we use these things. They're called uh, uh, chocolate segura peppers. They're an Italian sweet pepper that is long, like a jalapeno or something, but sweet, like a bell. Um, and they fry up wonderfully, add a wonderful flavor to a wonderful, like, dark paprika. And we had some mighty big ones come off, so I've had plenty to cook with every time I've needed them. 1 Thessalonians 5:2. For you yourselves are fully aware that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. Thank you, Frey. I appreciate you. That makes me happy. I'm so glad that I kind of had a theory that you would go look that passage up for me, um, because I know we had a conversation about this, but this is one of those things we can kind of, like, you take out of DM, so to speak. Do you feel like you were steeped in, like, the hard, like, do you feel like you were, like, really steeped in the hardcore Christian culture, or did you kind of, like, get to observe it from an outsider's position? Because I feel like we talked about it a little, but I don't know if I got deep into how you experienced the Christianity of the South. I ain't gonna lie, dog. That shit sound tight. It does, dude. Doesn't it? It is. It's wonderful. Hot peppers, quote unquote hot. Um, we've got some super hots. Honestly, we've got some like crazy fucking peppers out there, but also we've got some delicious sweet peppers too. You got to have a good mix, right? Because sweet peppers, they're offering a completely different experience and a completely different flesh style and everything than a hot pepper is offering, and you use them in very different ways. You would never chop up the amount of Choco Segura that I chopped up for that tomato soup. You would never chop that amount of habaneros up for any dish that you're making of any cuisine, unless you're making like 7 fucking pots of it or something. If you're making like 17 gallons, then maybe you might use that much habanero. But normally, you're not gonna use that much, right? They're used as a flavoring, like they're used as only a flavoring in those applications, whereas sweet peppers are used as kind of like a flavoring and a vegetable additive, kind of like a vegetable. They're used like a veggie, a vegetable with flavor, like celery. No, but yeah, I don't know. Being a kid who grew up totally implicated into the Christianity of the South, um, and really could never observe it from an outside perspective until I was an adult, has led me, I think, in my life to look at things through a very Christian lens. Because it was really and it's kind of sad when you think about it. Even though my parents themselves weren't like hardcore Christians, that's not where it came from, right? It came from the fact that my grandma was a pretty hardcore Christian, not like bigoted or anything, not like mean to us, or she wasn't hateful, I guess, but she was just, you know, a real strong, firm believer, and still is, obviously. And My dad was very insistent that we be allowed to go to church with her, at least until we were old enough to make our own decision. And for some reason, that couldn't happen until we were 12 or 13. So I had to go to church for my entire childhood until I was like 13, I think, when I finally was like, it was, in fact, my mom just asked me, was like, do you like going to church? And I was like, no, not really. And she was like, okay, well, you don't have to go anymore. And at first I thought she was mad at me, and at first it was like tense, but then we ended up talking more about it, and that's when I found out that my mom is basically an atheist. My mom is one of those, I think, one of those atheists that has a nibbling part in her brain that thinks maybe the whole God myth could be real, and she doesn't want to commit the unforgivable sin of saying God doesn't exist. Um, she doesn't want that on her conscience, I think. So she refuses to commit to the idea of being an atheist, but she's clearly basically an atheist. Like she condemns outright organized religion. She's ardently opposed to organized religion. She grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, so she was always like she was anti-religion from basically the minute she was able to get away from her abusive mom and start living her actual adult life. And by the time she had me, she was pretty radically anti-religion, right? She's super spiritual and into like pagan kind of practices and shit. So maybe she's not an atheist in the traditional sense, but to me it's just like if it quacks like a duck and talks like a duck and walks like a duck, at what point do you say it's no longer a goose, you know? But as a result of going to church throughout my entire childhood and going to some fucking crazy mega churches during that time, and then as a result of of moving to an area where Christianity was still way predominant and having most of the people that I socialized with and shit for years be Christian or kind of think of themselves as Christian, I think it's left me with this permanent scar that I'm really trying to fix by learning more shit of my brain will very often just go to the Bible. for some reason. Well, I say for some reason. That's an attempt at my brain at an attempt in my brain at delegating responsibility away from myself. I'm just gonna call myself out for that one. No, I know the reason. I completely know the reason. We've been sitting here talking about the reason. But, I think it also shows in me kind of a lack of other examples to use, maybe. But I don't know, because it's not like I'm as badly read as most people of my generation. Like, I can make my way through most books that I try to. Um, but yet, despite that, my brain still wants to go to that place so often. My brain so often wants that to be the example that I use. I think that's fascinating. My brain defaults to that, despite not really having any immersion in that culture for the last 10 years. My brain still thinks of things in that way very often. But yeah, long story short, getting back to what I was saying earlier, um, I've kind of gotten to a place now where I don't feel like I am doing myself any favors by worrying necessarily too hard about what's going on out in the world and in the news and shit. Because really, if I want to affect those things, like I was saying, the best way I can do that is by making choices in my life that elevate me to a position where I can actually exercise some authority over that in some way, or to where I can at least swing a little bit of weight, pun intended, and maybe get a positive decision made on something, one way or the other, every so often. I think that would be a pretty noble outcome of making decisions focused on improving one's own life, you know? But really, for me, it's just a way of like honestly, I just need to refocus my priorities and shit because I want things that I want things that this society has, for whatever reason, decided to gatekeep behind money and um, opaque social crucibles that I only partly understand. And as much as I may hate the fact that that is the case, and as much as I may rage against it, it is that way. And I'm never going to rage against it enough, probably, to elevate myself to that position merely on that alone. So I'm going to have to get used to going through some of this shit, right? And more importantly, I've got to kind of divest myself from this. I'm not going to stop staying informed because I still think it's important to know about, but I have to divest myself from having a personal stake in the way things go, one way or the other, and thinking that it's actually going to change my life. Because, dude, I can't tell you how much time I've let myself spinning out about, oh man, things are going to be weird today because of this situation or that situation. Dude, normal days every fucking time. I thought the day Trump got assassinated was going to be like riots popping off and shit. Dude, not a goddamn thing happened. Dude, if something happens worth my giving a fuck about it, I will probably know about it through channels other than my phone, or through channels other than like, um, well, what was I saying? I'll probably find out about it in ways that don't require me to stay completely up to date on the news cycle, or that don't require me to actually be prepared for it. Like, that's the thing. I guess that's what I'm driving at, right? It's like, I don't have to be prepared for every little fucking contingency. You know what I mean? I don't have to be out there thinking about every little thing that could possibly happen. From that little conversation, I have concluded that you haven't strayed far, so just keep your ears and heart open to the call from the one who knew you when you were formed in the womb. Oh boy. That's, dude. It is not your God that drove me away from your church. It is you and your brethren. That's the sad thing about it. I can, as evidenced by the fact that I'm an open and like, I'm kind of, in fact, defensive now. I think of the idea of being a panpsychist. I think I'd be willing to put that idea up to some debate, at least as a thought experiment. Um, Clearly, I don't have to have logic and rationality feature a whole lot in a belief for me to believe in it, right? I can recognize that some beliefs are useful not for their factual reality, but for the utility that like, I can get. Here's what I'm basically telling you in so many words. I can get with Plato's noble lie. Okay, I can. What I can't abide is an ignoble lie. And that's what I see coming out of a lot of Christian churches. I'm not saying yours is this way. I'm just saying that a lot of Christian churches are hives of bigotry and hatefulness and anger and bitterness and all of the things that Jesus would have protested if he were alive today, and that Jesus would have protested if he had encountered them in his life, and according to the Bible, did protest when he encountered them in his life. Um, that cannot I cannot abide that in a Christian church, and as long as that is abided in a single Christian church, I will never call myself a Christian. It's not about the factual reality of the belief for me necessarily, right? Because there are Christians out there already who will straight up tell you, yeah, I mean, in fact, it's becoming a more and more popular position of Christians who, for them to just be like, oh, yeah, I mean, like, okay, yeah, you can't prove God exists. And in fact, it doesn't matter if God actually exists. Now, a lot of them, I will admit, do themselves the real disservice of going through a lot of sophistry before they tell you that central fucking point. When really, if they would just start with that, I think that they would get some more converts every so often. If they would just start with the idea of like, listen, this idea I got, I mean, it might be fucking true and 100% real. It might not be. There's an old book that talks about it, but I don't know. Here's what I do know. Believing in it has made my life 100% fucking better, whether it's true or fucking not. Dude, you'd get 100% more converts in Christianity, and people are now starting to try that fucking that tool of recruitment, right? And I think it's a good idea because it gives them the opportunity to distinguish themselves from other Christian churches by being like, we're not about convincing you that God is like an actual phenomenon going on. We're about teaching the works of Christ. We are about spreading the fucking gospel through our actions. Come to our soup kitchen and work in our soup kitchen. Come to our shelter and work the gate. Come to our trade center and help people learn a trade. And you will worship with us in the way that we worship, right? I could get behind a church like that 110%. In fact, I'm just going to say I would join a church like that. And I would explain it and defend it in just the way I did there. That it's not about the factuality, that it's about the works. that the belief system produces. And to me, I'm down with that. I've never heard a good reason why something that has good effects in society should be discouraged merely on the basis of its being false. It might sound kind of contradictory, but like something doesn't need to be real for something. And I take it maybe a bit too far, but here's the thing: I look at it like an outgrowth of our human evolution process, right? So humans evolved to detect danger and react as if it's real, regardless of whether it is or not, right? And that sort of errant detection system can occasionally misfire, but even when it does, oftentimes it ends up actually having turned out to have worked to warn us against some danger we weren't perceiving yet. Um, so, the noble lie has been serving our species probably since the days of Homo erectus. The idea of like, we don't go across that river because there's fucking monsters over there. There's fucking dragons over there, whatever. There's whatever the case may be. Really, the reason they don't go across that river is because there's a really fucking particularly violent band of human beings that lives over there. And they're known to just fucking kill you just for fucking seeing you, or whatever the case may be. Maybe it's because um, maybe it's a really wide river and there's a cougar or something whose territory ends right at the lakeside or right at the riverside, I should say. But there's a reason behind it, right? Even if it's presented in a sort of a bullshit kind of fake way, it still has some clear utility in society. And people behaving as though that's true is probably saved our society more times than we can count, right? People believing a certain danger is true and reacting to it as if it is, I think, has probably saved our species' ass a number of times. Now, has it probably also inconvenienced and set us back? Obviously. But we've gotten pretty far in our 250,000 years on this planet, and I think that's pretty admirable of us. I don't go to church. It's been 10 years since I've last been. Well, that makes you better than most Christians, so I'll admit that. There are people who pray alone behind closed doors. Don't worry, you seem receptive. Peace out. Well, that was actually a very kind chatter. That was actually really cool. Neat. That was cool. I hope that person's subbed, and I hope they stick around because that was actually a really fun chat. Um, that was kind of neat. And yeah, I mean, I'm receptive to all ideas that don't come at the expense of other people's dignity and other people's. I don't know how to put it. I'm all for ideas that I'm all for ideas that work within love as a framework. Maybe that's a good way to put it. I don't know. The more I talk, the more I think I just sound like a hippie, but maybe that's a good thing. I wonder what TC stands for. Team chat? Tough chat? Who knows? The thing that's weird to me is like, why does that person care if I'm a Christian, right? Maybe it's because he legitimately believes the Bible, and the Bible does tell you to spread the word far and wide, right? But I think it's something different. I think that Christians have this urge to convert cool people or interesting people that they know or interact with to Christianity in the hopes that they will finally have someone who's not just another Christian square to hang out with and actually talk religion in a deep way with. When I would really rather them just come at me from the perspective of like, we disagree, neither of us is going to talk the other out of our position. Let's talk about how each other feels. You know how few conversations I've ever gotten to have like that with an atheist, or I'm sorry, with another Christian, or with a fucking, okay, I was trying to say two different things at once there. I've never had I never had conversations like that when I was a Christian with an atheist, and I have never had, God, what a terrible combination of words, a conversation as an atheist with a Christian under those auspices. It's always been a debate. No matter which position I was coming at it from, it's always a debate. When really, I think the more, not always, but it's been so fucking rare in my life, right? And really, I think the more interesting fucking subject to talk about, if you're talking about somebody who knows that you're an atheist and somebody else that knows the other person is a Christian, then wouldn't it be so fucking cool for those people to just like set their personalities aside, set their personal religious adherence aside, and just, or well, not even set it aside, but talk about it as if they don't have to convince one another. I think some people are just incapable of that, though. I think some people are fiercely defensive of what is said and what is, allowed to be by people at face value. And I guess I get that because people don't want people to be uninformed or misinformed or whatever. But at the same time, you just gotta let a motherfucker talk at some point. Dude, I'm so tired. I think I'm gonna go, y'all. I'm real sleepy.